still, but it's coming along, it's manifesting. All right, so I am so excited to be here with all of you today. Excited to dive into the topic of being impeccable with our word. And I just want to say that before we get started is if this comes off a little scripted, it's because it probably will be. And it's just what I need for this process. Okay, so I have no shame in asking for what I need. So with that said, let's dive into being impeccable with our word. So the way I like to look at the word is our precursor for manifestation. Okay, our word is more than a symbol or syllable. It's a force within us and is the precursor to manifesting our lives. So our word is an energy that is composed of our intentions. And this is something I picked up from Taylor's dad, is taking words and breaking them apart and looking at the meaning with them. And I love the word intention because you have intention. Okay, so I'm going to give the example of like stretching a rubber band, right? So if you stretch a rubber band far enough, thus creating tension, the natural reaction is that there's going to be a snapping effect or it's going to break. Okay, so there's an energy, there's a resonance to that. And most importantly, that band snapping could startle you. So it creates a change, a physiological change within you, okay, that you experience. And I think this is going to be important to recognize as we go through the talk of being impeccable with our word. Okay, so there's something that Paul Chek, so Paul Chek is like my mentor that I've never met, okay? He says this, and I really love it. So love is like a boomerang. What you throw out is what you get back. Okay, so what begins in us is created through us, as us, and for us, and out into the world. That sounds pretty familiar, right? Okay. So Don Miguel Ruiz refers to our word as a gift directly from God. And God is in and of all things, including us. We are God Godding around. Okay. He also says that our word is like a double-edged sword. On one hand, our word can create the highest good, or on the other, a living hell. Our word is our power for manifestation, and depending on how we use our word, impacts our agreements with self and other. Okay, Don Miguel Ruiz refers to this agreement as the most powerful of all. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about what does it mean to be impeccable and what does it mean to be impeccable with your word. So impeccability means without sin. And a sin is anything that we do that goes against ourselves. And this can come in the form of judging or blaming. And when we judge and blame ourselves, we are rejecting ourselves. I believe this is why some Christians believe suicide or murder to be an unpardonable sin. To take your own life or the life of other is the rejection of life itself. And for me, the word apathy comes to mind. And if you guys have ever read David R. Hawkins' books, The Power of Force, apathy is like right there at the bottom of consciousness. Okay? So it's not a great place to be. So a word can really change our whole belief, whether it's with ourselves or with other, for better or worse. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and give an example of a personal experience where a word negatively impacted me, that I had a negative impact, and then we'll go into what a word can positively do. And there'll be a little meditation in that too. Okay, so when I was growing up, I was a pretty heavy-set kid, and my dad lives in Georgia. So every once in a while, my brother and I would fly out and visit my dad. He lives on the East Coast. He lives on a little island subsection called Tybee. And so his house would sit right next to a riverbed, and this was when I was about 4 or 5 years old. And he had a dock that would go out into the river, into the channel. And so when the tide came in, it would fill up enough to where me and my brother can jump off the dock and go swim and play. Okay, so there was this one time where we were playing off the dock. We were doing what kids do. And a group of boaters started to come through the channel. And the boaters decided to stop and tease me for my weight. And so I'm not going to go into the words that were spoken. There's no reason for that. But from that day forward, I did not take my shirt off to go swimming until I was about 16 or 17. Okay, so there was a lot of shame that I carried from that experience. And I believe so much in what they said that the shame carried with me for over 10 years of my life. I didn't actually even remember this experience until I started writing this talk for today. And it was really interesting because I don't know if I ever created the space for myself to first forgive myself and thus forgive the boaters for the words that were spoken. And I want to emphasize forgive because we're going to talk about forgiveness coming up here pretty soon too. Okay, so from that day, I felt shame, and I carried that with me for quite a number of years. And when the boaters told me those words, I then believed what they said, and that's making an agreement. Okay, it's taking an opinion and you're embodying it as your truth. Okay, so for me, it was that my love, my capacity to be loved, was only measured by my weight or lack of. It's really however you want to look at it, right? And so that's how our word can negatively impact us or others. Okay, this is that side of the sword that can create hell on earth. And so I do want to give an example of how a word can positively impact our lives. And I'm going to invite all of you to do a little meditation with me. So why don't you just go ahead and close your eyes. And I want you to just take a deep breath in. And I want you to come to your inner space. Come into your heart, quiet your mind, and come into your body. I'm going to give you a second to get there. And so I'm going to ask a series of questions, and I want you guys to just explore that experience. Was there a time in your life when an opinion impacted you or created a sense of love, belonging, or gratitude? And just remind yourself of what it was like to receive that. Step into that experience. Step into the feeling, that positive word that was spoken to you. And ask yourself, was it empowering? Did it create motivation or growth, whether spiritually, mentally, physically, or maybe even financially? Was that a powerful experience for you, and did it impact you deeply? And did it create positive change in your life? And I want you to just take a few more breaths into that. Come into that place of receiving that word and reminding yourself. And when you're ready, go ahead and come back into the Zoom room. Step back into your body. We're going to continue forward. So with that said, I can remember a time not too long ago that a word really positively impacted me. Okay, so a few years ago, I used to work at a kombucha brewery, and I was brewing kombucha for a small local kombucha company up in the Bay Area. And they promoted me to manager, and I had never been in a management position before, and it was a really new experience for me. But that was the first time that I felt someone recognized something within me that I didn't even see or know existed. And it was really funny because my boss, Brian, when he promoted me, he said this to me: "This is either a great decision or you're going to realize that you're better than this and do something different." Okay, so I left Marin Kombucha and started my own business a year later. Okay, so that's a really great example of how somebody's word can positively impact you or yourself. Okay. And this is the power of the word, the power of our intention, those tensions that we create within ourselves. It can be used as a force of pain, or it can bring forth the highest good in ourselves or others. And so I want to talk about this idea that Don Miguel Ruiz refers to as the human mind being fertile soil. Okay. So the Four Agreements talks about the mind being fertile soil. And unfortunately, the majority of people's minds, including myself at times, is fertile to only grow Monsanto, glyphosate resistant GMO seeds of pain. All right. Because our soil, our mind, is really prepared for that. And this is, in my belief, because of our conditioning. And so from a young age, our parents told us things like words like can't, should, shouldn't, or don't. And in hindsight, for most of us, this wasn't because our parents meant to be malicious or ill-willed. And could these responses have been out of fear or lack of? Absolutely, sure. But it's just the program that they were given as well. And it was out of the means for learning self-preservation in some way or another, or an attempt to fulfill an unmet need. With this in mind, I believe this is a great perspective to embody forgiveness. We do the best with what we have. Forgive them, for they know not what they do, as once said by Jesus himself. Okay. And most importantly, we must forgive ourselves first for how we felt or feel. We cannot forgive others without first acknowledging and taking ownership of our own feelings and needs. Don Miguel Ruiz says this: when you are impeccable, you take responsibility for your actions, but you do not judge or blame yourself. So to me, judging or blaming yourself would be denying your own humanity. On the topic of responsibility or self-responsibility, I would also like to quote the late Marshall Rosenberg, author of Nonviolent Communication. He says this: nonviolent communication heightens our awareness that what others say and do may be the stimulus, but never the cause of our feelings. We see that feelings result from how we choose to receive what others say and do, as well as from our particular needs and expectations in that moment. With this component, we are led to accept responsibility for what we do to generate our own feelings. When we take responsibility for our own feelings, our feeling is a choice based on how we perceive our conditions, okay, so the outside conditions. And when we take responsibility for our feelings without judgment or blame, is life affirming. It is the acknowledgement of our own humanity, and there is power in ownership. And I thought that was really powerful, at least for me. Unfortunately, words like can't, should, and don't are forms of communication that are life alienating and create limitations. So maybe all of you can remember a time or an experience when you've heard someone using words like can't, should, or don't, and maybe they were talking to you, or maybe you observed a parent telling their kid, or whatever it might be. There might be an experience that you remember here. And in my opinion, when we experience that or we see that, there is an intent to create a boundary or preservation, and to whom is receiving those words creates limitation, okay? And to me, the difference between a boundary and a limitation is that boundaries preserve the container of one's own infinite potential, where limitations create barriers for one's growth. One is based on judgment and fear. The other is created out of respect and love. what either for self or other. And that one's a boundary. Okay. It's about this. How do we unlearn our violent ways of communication? And how do we communicate effectively to meet each other's needs while communicating empathically and compassionately? Okay, so I now want to talk about how to make new life affirming agreements. And it brings me a lot of joy and relief to know that we have the ability to make new agreements with ourselves, agreements that are life affirming, and we can support others in changing their agreements as well. Our impeccability is measured by our amount of self-love, and it is directly proportional to the integrity of our own word. With that said, we need to till the soil of our mind. Okay, we have to take care of that mind. We have to take care of that soil. Okay, and tell ourselves that we love ourselves. Make a gratitude journal. Have a gratitude prayer at dinner. Say grace and create self-honoring boundaries and invest that energy into what our truth is. If we want to plant seeds of compassion, love, and connection, then we must first make the soil ready to grow that which it is what we desire and serves us or others. Planting crops of good only produces more seeds of healthy crop. The vegetation is that which we manifest into our lives. If we prepare for hell, then we will give and receive hell. But if we prepare for heaven, we will give and receive heaven. This is how we make new agreements. This is how we make heaven on earth. We are designed for both the light and the dark. But the responsibility of our choice is our own. So I would like to invite all of you to support one another with our word by first supporting ourselves with our word. This is how we make heaven on earth. Let your word be your bond, and it will not be broken. Aho, and thank you.